Hi, everyone. This week we are continuing our work on the Am I the A-hole intervention argument paper. And so I want to go over some of the resources that we have online and just kind of get you hopefully feeling pretty confident as you're moving forward with this paper. One thing to be thinking about, I think that's really important with this essay is audience. And basically, when we're thinking about audience, I want you to be thinking about the fact that when you're making your argument in this paper, you're basically arguing to the people who are involved in this conflict, right? And like, obviously, you have a wider audience too, because it's going to be anybody who's in the class who's reading about the way that you've analyzed the argument and, deciding whether or not they agree with your argument. But I think it's really important to make sure that you are thoroughly considering each side. And that can be really challenging with this project because we are getting our information from only one side, right? Like occasionally you can find a post on Am I the A-hole that will, somebody will respond to it and they'll say, here's what really happened. And then they'll tell their side of the story. That's actually pretty rare. Usually you're just getting one side of the story, and then you have to use kind of context clues and evidence in the that they're providing with you to help you make a decision. And so the case is, the argument that you're going to be making is almost inherently flawed because you're not getting that second side, but you still can make a pretty good judgment based on the evidence that they do give you. And sometimes people give you evidence without realizing it. Okay. So um, I think one of the most important things to consider with this paper is our own experience, and especially kind of in thinking about bias. So, for example, if I am writing a paper about parenting, for which I did, then I'm not a parent, so I can't really comment on what's right or not to do if you have kids, in the same way as somebody who does have kids, right? Because that perspective lends credibility and that experience gives you anecdotal evidence that you can use to make an argument. And so basically what I'm getting to is this is this assignment coming up this week. Some of you have already submitted, but I'm asking you to think a little bit about what experience you have that could be relevant to the paper. Some of you are going to not have any relevant experience, and that's okay. You don't have to have experience with this type of issue in order to weigh in. But if you do have personal experience, like I was saying, it does give you a little bit of an opportunity to lend that to your credibility when you're making an argument. You can say, look, something like this happened to me, and here's what I did. Okay. And so you can actually use your own personal experience in this paper to support your argument for one side or the other. And I would actually recommend it. And if you want to see, I've actually included some personal experience in my own essay. This prompt is going to try and help you get at what that personal experience might be. And I know it's a really long prompt, but what I found is that this tends to be one of the assignments that helps students the most in making this argument in this paper. You still have to have a source, like it's still going to be a research paper, but just keep in mind that that your personal experience, it can provide bias. It can make it so that it's harder to understand the other person's side of the story because you relate more to one side than the other, and this has happened to you maybe. But it can also give you a lot of credibility, which can be great. If you look at my paper, I have a structure here down at the bottom that you can kind of check out. Here's my outline. I have an introduction. I start with the original poster's perspective, the person who posted on Reddit. Then I move into the fiance's perspective. This is her fiance, right? And then I go into a counter argument. I address where she's right. This is because I want to make sure that she sees that I have listened to her, that I heard what she said, and that I understand where she might have some points. And just kind of a thing to add here too is that this is where I used a source for my paper because I'm not a parent, like I said, and so this was something that gives me an opportunity to, I looked at a source so that I would be able to use someone else's expertise to help support my argument since I don't have that expertise. Then I move into my own personal experience, which is that I went to a nice restaurant and the server sang happy birthday, and nobody seemed to care at all, even though it was a pretty nice restaurant. I'm not a little kid. Uh, and so it's a little different, But I think that her one of her central claims is that basically, you don't do this kind of thing in a restaurant. And so I talk a little bit about what is the etiquette surrounding birthdays in restaurants. And so, I start by talking about children in restaurants, then I talk about birthdays in restaurants. Then I move on to his argument, her fiance's argument. He says, and this is from her perspective, she told us he said this, which I think was maybe a flaw because this is where she's really going to lose me. She says, he said families do that. Okay. And so his argument is that even if this was challenging, we have to put aside our maybe discomfort, like a little bit of discomfort, because you have to do whatever it takes to help family. Um, and obviously, like there's limits to that. I'm not saying anybody should, martyr themselves for their family, but I think he has a really good point here about how a little bit of discomfort, feeling just a little embarrassed, it just doesn't compare to making a kid happy on their birthday when their mom is sick, right? And then finally, and don't forget you want to have this in your paper too. I have a recommendation for behavior moving forward. And I asked kind of a big question of her, which is she sure this is what she wants to do? She didn't know that she was going to have custody of this kid or that she was going to be with somebody who has full custody basically of this child. Does she still want to be in this relationship? Because I think that maybe she's not as enthusiastic about it as she's pretending to be. And then my conclusion, okay? So I just wanted to show you how I structured my paper and how I'm able to use my anecdotal experience as well as my research to help support this argument. I think it's a really good technique. There's going to be ways to do it differently, especially if you don't have personal experience, ways that you can use multiple sources, for example, to strengthen your argument. That's absolutely an option. But I just want you to think about what experience you might have that you can contribute. All right. Have a great day.